Hi, this is StrategyCast, where smart marketers and bold business thinkers share the plays behind brand breakthroughs. I'm Lori Jones, President and CEO of Avocet Communications. Marketing in 2026 is going to look very different. AI will be everywhere, performance pressure will keep climbing, and the marketers who win will be the ones who connect brand, creativity, and revenue in bold, measurable ways. Today's guest, Annika Bjo rkholm, is one of the most refreshingly honest voices in B2B marketing, and she's been talking with peers across Europe and North America about what's actually working heading into 2026. Her findings cut through the noise, revealing 6 clear focus areas that separate leading marketing organizations from the rest: perception, positioning, brand, demand gen, GTM alignment, and metrics that matter. In this episode, we'll unpack all 6 with real examples and no fluff takeaways you can apply right now.
A competitive edge starts with strategy, and strategy starts with knowing how to develop one. StrategyCast is a leading marketing podcast that serves up strategic insights, trends, and tips to help separate your business from the pack. Tune in weekly as host Lori Jones interviews bold marketing leaders who have priceless wisdom and are willing to share. Each episode explores cutting-edge approaches that have proven instrumental in transforming brands into industry trailblazers.
Welcome to the show, Annika.
Thank you so much, Lori.
Oh, my goodness. I am so excited to bring this topic forward as we're moving into 2026. And I really appreciate the fact that you spent the last several months really speaking to people in ways that allowed us to develop a great show today and bring actual insights to market. So thank you for that. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, would you please tell us a little bit more about your journey?
Yeah, sure thing. So I'm Annika Bjo rkholm, currently based in Minneapolis, originally from Finland. I've lived in Amsterdam for 8 years, so I'm very familiar with the ecosystem there. And in Amsterdam, I was part of the founding team of a B2B SaaS company called Swipe Guide. And Swipe Guide was actually acquired last year, and now I'm the VP of marketing here at L2L. In the US, we're a industrial B2B SaaS company. We help manufacturing companies prevent costly production stoppages, downtime. And from a personal perspective, it's really the kind of unsexy B2B product that I really love marketing. It's complex, it's mission critical, it's not necessarily immediately exciting, but it is very actually super exciting when and interesting when you really understand what the stakes are.
Yeah, that's so exciting. And you've worked, as you've just explained, across Europe and North America. How does that global perspective shape the way you think about growth and go-to-market?
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, I do think that there are so many similarities, but I definitely think that, seeing both sides, it's so clear that you need to tailor your messaging according to your audience. So, of course, not just the kind of geographic audience and shaping into segments that make sense, but of course, also, I think we're going to talk a bit about psychographics later on as well. Kind of marinating those two together in B2B is so important as well.
Yeah, I could not agree more. Marketing still gets treated as a cost center in so many different communications roles and companies across the world, instead of really that revenue driver. And that perception must change. So let's dive right into our first topic here, which is perception, marketing's reputation problem. You've said that marketers need to market themselves internally. What does that look like in practice?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, I would love to take a step back here as well, because this is not just me talking. Over the past couple of months, I love learning from my peers. And I would say 2025 has been especially tumultuous for most marketers. And my nature is very curious. So over the past months, I've been having these amazing, honest conversations with more than 20 of my personal favorite marketing leaders across different B2B companies, both in Europe, here in North America as well. And really, just asking them what works for them right now, and cutting through the noise, because there's so much noise out there. And of course, also moving into 2026, what will they be focusing on? So now just talking about these 6 different topics that we're going to cover on this podcast today, perception being one of those areas that so many people talked about, and just making sure that internal marketing is something that's seen. And I would say if marketing isn't seen as a revenue driver, it will never get the resources or the respect it deserves.
Yeah.
So we have to prove ourselves with data. And I would say that means a few things. So first, building internal channels to show your impact. And here I'm not talking about a monthly email newsletter that honestly nobody ever reads. I mean, creating visibility into how marketing actually influences pipeline. Show up at sales meetings. Make sure that you have those, that close alignment with sales. Present at the all hands meeting. Make your wins visible, and, share the impact. I would say definitely also speak CFO and CEO language. And I would say, it's not the same as marketing jargon. Nobody cares about your MQL number or, conversion rates or engagement metrics. They care about pipeline, revenue, churn. So I would say, in order to make sure that, that marketing is perceived as a value driver, you need to talk about it that way. So you should translate everything into those terms as well. And I would say third,
Really quick, before we get there, I want to ask you this question because I think it's very important. This seems very obvious to you and I and many of our listeners, but it's very factual. It's very true. Why aren't marketers self-promoting themselves more internally in organizations?
I think that's a great question. Honestly, based on the conversations that I've been having, it's a little awkward. Most marketers are very used to promoting something, a product, a company, but not necessarily themselves or what they've been working on
Impact they're making.
internally.
Right. Yeah. I tell you, that is such an important lesson. And establishing the dashboard sounds basic, but it's still not being done across the board to really connect the dots to the impact. I'll give you a great example of connecting the dots on impact that did not have an MQL or an SQL associated with it at all, but we got credit for it. And that is very large manufacturer across the North America. And we were doing customer voice of customer interviews, and we called on several former customers who this company ended up having to let go during COVID because they couldn't service. Bad blood, a lot of negative perception, reputation sort of thing. We decided that we were going to call them. We wanted to learn from them. One of the customers that we interviewed, one of the former customers that we interviewed, gave us some incredibly important intel, not only about what happened, but what it would take to move forward. We, of course, pushed that information out to the commercial team, the sales team, and the president of this business ended up calling on that business, on that former client, got an appointment, and walked out of the appointment with an RFP to respond to. So that is so important when it comes to, that's not an MQL, it's not an SQL, but there's so much synergy between sales and marketing and the commercial team that the attaboy went to the conversation we had for follow-up. It can be that simple as well.
No, I 100% agree. And of course, marketing doesn't end with marketing, right?
Right.
It's part of the entire company, right? So it's all the way through the entire sales process, all the assets that you share, and of course also, customer success. It ciphers through the products. It's really it's an all-encompassing thing. So of course, like talking about marketing and brand, like it's really not just the campaigns you run, to your point, Lori. And I think definitely, of course, metrics matter. But we need to prove our value and our impact as well. And until we can prove that, with, I would say, data and real life stories that you were just sharing, with data that executives actually care about, we will just be seen as kind of the slide deck coloring department.
Right. Yeah, I could not agree more. Okay, let's move into number 3 now.
Perfect. So my third point was actually, reporting metrics that link directly to pipeline and revenue. So I think you had a great example there. It's not directly an MQL, but you might have lost that customer. So I think definitely not focusing on those vanity metrics. So nobody cares if you got 10,000 impressions. Showing that path from campaign to qualified opportunity to closed deal as well. So that very, very tight-knit collaboration across the board, holistically looking at the go-to-market operations, go-to-market teams, as a tight-knit picture, and how we as marketing can make sure that that needle is moving in the right direction.
I cannot agree more. And that point in particular connects perfectly to the next area that we're going to talk about, which is positioning and point of view. You've said that bland messaging gets forgotten. What makes a point of view memorable today?
Yeah, so I would say of course, we live in an attention economy right now, right? People have an attention span of like an ant right now. So it's really, it needs to, whatever you put out there, it needs to make people stop mid-scroll. It needs to make people feel a certain way. They need to react in a certain way. Else they're just gonna, keep on doing whatever they're doing.
Right.
So the peers I talked to kept coming back to this idea of having a contrarian point of view. So you need to anchor your thought leadership around a very bold stance. And I think definitely also, bland is not just boring, it's forgotten.
Right.
So, the contrarian point of view. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the contrarian point of view can get out of hand. So, of course, we've all seen those posts on LinkedIn with whatever X is dead, or here's how AI will take over Y.
Right.
All those posts on LinkedIn. So, obviously, there's a lot of that. But essentially, what it should do is make people stop and think. It should be educational, it should be interesting, or funny. I think humor is definitely something that is underutilized right now as well in most B2B marketing. Sometimes, of course, this contrarian point of view make people disagree, or nod their heads violently, or make them want to share it with somebody else. So, you don't need clear headlines. You need a contrarian voice that resonates with your exact target audience. So I think that's definitely, we were mentioning psychographics earlier. And I think definitely that's massively underrated in B2B. A strong point of view that your best customers can actually identify with, that truly resonates with them at kind of a values level, is what I would say really builds a standout brand, especially in boring markets. I'm in industrial tech. It can be seen as pretty boring, but I would say,
Entertain.
yeah, no, exactly. So I would say it attracts more of that type of customer to you. And it kind of creates this self-selection process in a way. So the right people lean in and the wrong people filter themselves out. So different is better than better, because features don't necessarily always sell, stories sell. And even if you have a technical buyer, you know, they want a good story.
Yeah.
They want the raw and real. They want to hear about, the personal experiences, the lost revenue, the missed shipments, the shutdowns, the personal. That's what grabs attention. So, having a memorable point of view isn't about being provocative for just the sake of being provocative. It's really about taking a stance on something that actually matters, that's meaningful to your best customers, and saying it in a way that they maybe haven't heard before. So being fresh, being refreshing, and, in that way, really putting some personality into it.
So we believe that strong positioning really only works if leadership understands that not everything in marketing can be neatly measured, which brings us to brand and metrics. And of course, my example ties very, very nicely into that. So if we take a look at this very, 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 very big topic today, how can marketers make the case for brand investment in a metrics-driven environment? A topic I love.
Definitely. I'm a huge believer in brand. And I definitely also believe that inconsistency is what kills a brand.
Right.
So of course, like, we need to make sure that everything we do is consistent with the brand voice, making sure that, it's not boring, it's not repetitive. Being consistent means discipline, essentially. So I think especially now, in the age of AI generated content slop everywhere, and I would say distributed teams create more and more and more all the time in terms of content, in terms of everything related to marketing, faster than ever. So I would say inconsistency is the biggest threat to your brand right now. And of course, core point of view, we're just talking about point of view, brand positioning, super important. And I would say the best teams and the marketing leaders that I've been talking to say that, being consistent also means that they can give their teams creative freedom on execution. So your contrarian stance, for example, stays the same. Your core message about what really makes you different stays the same, but how you express yourself evolves. So different formats, different channels, different creative approaches. So it's almost like jazz,
Right.
So the melody stays consistent, but the improvisation around it can be creative and fresh. So I would say, what doesn't work is everybody just creating content in their own direction with no connective tissue. And that's where you get brand dilution, and your audience can't really figure out who you are, what you stand for, if you are the right fit for them as well. And I would say, of course, like, visuals is such an important part of that right now as well. I would say top tier visuals are becoming the norm across social, digital in general. Storytelling and framing kind of become the essential differentiators. And I would say the bar for what looks quote unquote professional has gone way up. Because
Yeah.
of course, anybody can create a good visual. AI tools can generate those decent looking graphics that a couple years ago would have taken, any good designer to create. Canva has democratized basic design. So mediocre design doesn't just look mediocre anymore. It actually hurts your credibility. And I would say in B2B, especially when you're, as a marketer, essentially asking someone to trust you with a 6 or 7 or higher figure purchase decision, your visual identity is actually doing a lot of the heavy lifting.
I
It
I agree more. What do you think are
Yeah.
the biggest mistakes companies are making when they're actually over measuring marketing?
Over measuring marketing, I would say most marketers think that they can measure everything, right? So I would say it's pretty controversial, but you can't really quantify everything in marketing, and that's okay. Um, Dashboards can't measure trust. They can't really measure brand. Of course, to some extent you can, brand voice, etc., but they can't really measure things like word of mouth, even though those things definitely drive sales. And I would say the biggest mistake I see is that companies, marketers are trying to put a precise ROI number on absolutely everything.
Yeah.
And then making decisions based purely on those numbers, even when the numbers are measuring the wrong things.
Yeah, I'll give you a great example of what is difficult to measure with that, but a strong ROI. We're launching a brand, let's say, and the existing, let's say it's a new company, and the existing customers notice the brand launch in the market, and they mention it to someone on their sales team or their CSR. There's so much value in that customer talking to the client about the fact that they saw the brand in the market. It's very, very difficult to put a metric to that. And it's a great example of brand health, which a lot of people push aside. And something that I think from an ideology standpoint, we need to start really paying attention to.
Oh, 100%. Being that top of mind vendor, or essentially just the vendor of choice,
Right.
being recognized as a brand, obviously it ties immediately to that awareness for sure. I have another great example. Very early in my career, I fell into this growth hacking trap. So I was so focused on testing everything, optimizing every single metric, that I lost sight of the bigger picture. And of course, the consequence was that the essence got completely diluted. I was changing messaging, trying different angles, just, testing everything across the board, A/B testing absolutely everything, but without a solid foundation for your brand, all that testing was just creating confusion. And I think that's when we come to kind of that, what one of my peers, Igor, he's the head of marketing at Circular Rice, he calls this random acts of marketing. So I think that's kind of also something that a lot of marketers kind of fall into. So that's kind of the flip side of being willing to fail and testing new things. It's kind of going overboard. You can try too many things and you can stray too far from your core competencies as well. So definitely avoiding random acts of marketing was one of the good learnings that I took away from some of my conversations as well.
I absolutely love that. And let's move into demand generation in the age of the loop. The traditional funnel no longer reflects how people buy. Modern marketing is a loop. It's a continuum, always on and always learning. You've said the funnel is dead. What does the loop look like in practice?
Yeah, the funnel is dead is definitely a very, controversial statement. I would say the traditional sense of the funnel is dead and probably was never alive to start with because, as one of my colleagues always says, humans will human. And it's really just, us as human beings, we are not predictable. And we're not going to take a linear approach when we're looking into, a new, for example, software to buy. And the funnel, kind of in the traditional sense, assumes that prospects move linearly, from awareness, consideration, decision. But honestly, that's not really how anyone, like a real human, really buys. So obviously prospects bounce around. They might see you on LinkedIn, or they heard your CEO talk on a podcast, or they use your ROI calculator on your website, or, they saw an ad somewhere. They asked ChatGPT for vendor recommendations. So obviously, it's chaos, it's looped. There is no straight line there. So I think definitely kind of that continuum that you were just mentioning, this notion of loop marketing. I think it was HubSpot coining this term, like a new playbook for the AI era. It really
Definitely some controversy around it for sure.
Oh, 100%. And it's not that I am like 100% bought into this. It's not a new concept in any way. It kind of looks like an infinity loop, the way that they, visualized it. But I do think that, it's what I do like about it is that it definitely puts the focus on that it's an ever evolving system, and not a linear funnel. And
The thing that I think is very, very interesting here, and this is a trap a lot of marketers get caught in, is let's just visually think through the traditional funnel. Um, all too often, brands go to market without awareness. They enter the funnel mid funnel. And without that awareness, it's going to be very, very difficult to create any kind of loop, whatever you want to call it, that is going to ultimately impact and introduce the brand the number of times that it needs to be in order for people to move down the funnel. So it's a great concept, I think, in theory, as long as awareness is, again, layered on top of it, because it's just going to take so much longer to make the impact without it.
100%. And I think definitely, to your point, what this means in practice is that winning teams are reinforcing that point of view across every single touch points, no matter what part of the so-called funnel they're in. You can't just nail top of funnel awareness and just expect that to cascade down.
Right.
You need to be consistent and compelling everywhere that prospect might encounter you. So, and I think that definitely also requires alignment, super close alignment with sales, with customer success, with other commercial teams, with the product team, because great marketing isn't just top of funnel anymore either. And it's definitely not just middle of funnel or bottom of funnel either, because, the funnel doesn't necessarily exist in the traditional sense anymore.
Did any of the individuals you talked to mention any specific techniques or tactics that they're achieving surprising results with right now?
Yeah. So I would say, the teams that are really doing this well, something that was mentioned very often was feature dumping. So not focusing on the feature dumping, but really baking that storytelling into every single aspect and every single element of your marketing. Definitely also focusing on tailoring your, let's say, your sales decks and slide decks in general, focused on kind of being narrative driven for different buyer personas, for different sub industries as well. Um, these day in the life videos per persona was also mentioned, a couple of times actually. Setting up champions programs, community was mentioned so many times. Kind of focusing on the ecosystem driven, marketing as well. Any sort of tools that are helpful, for champions, giving champions numbers that they can take straight to their, decision maker or finance department. Regional variations, 100%, EU versus US messaging for relevance and credibility, always for sure. Really, at the end of the day, making sure that every single touch point reinforces that core point of view that goes back to your strong positioning, even if the format changes. So I think, it's messier than the old funnel model, but it's also more realistic about how B2B buying actually works in 2026. So,
I
it's
think it's very, very interesting. It's an important take for sure. And of course, none of this happens in isolation, which leads us to one of your strongest takes. Go-to-market alignment isn't just about sales. You've said it's bigger than sales, bottom line. What does that mean for CMOs and revenue leaders?
Definitely. I need to start with, I love my sales colleagues. I honestly, I love sales. They're great. But I do think that this is such an important distinction because I see a lot of companies, that I've had conversations with where go-to-market strategy just means sales strategy. And I think that that's a massive missed opportunity because go-to-market covers everything. It's ICP and positioning, it's messaging strategy, it's go-to-market motion strategy, it's the marketing execution, implementation, the pricing strategies, the sales enablement, the sales execution and RevOps. So it's really that entire engine of how you go to market. And I would say definitely for CMOs, this means that you can't just own top of funnel and hand things off to sales. I think marketing leaders are accountable for how the entire customer acquisition system works together as well. They play a huge part of it, So I think for revenue leaders, this means that marketing isn't just a lead gen machine. Marketing shapes how buyers perceive you as a company and as a brand, and how those sales conversations go. And of course, with pricing, you can command whether your customers stick around or not. So
Right.
I think that there's a huge connection between, marketing and churn as well, because you can impact that, at least to some extent.
Talk a
And
little bit about motion strategy here. I think that's one of the parts of GTM that gets very, very difficult to develop frameworks for and ultimately implement.
Definitely. No, for sure. I agree. And I think that also completely depends on, what you're actually putting out there, right?
Right.
So I think that's kind of a question of like, okay, it depends, right? So that's something that needs to be tailored and something that definitely also needs that, um, that unique approach to it as well. I think there as well, especially, talking about go-to-market motion in general, uh, everything that has to do with launching new products, making sure that we're, positioning those in the best way possible in the market. Great marketing really truly extends into customer success
Right.
as well. So, things like customer stories, community building, making champions out of your users,
Right.
that's also all marketing. And it definitely also directly impacts and ties into retention, expansion, revenue as well. And also even honestly, like adoption of your products. So I think that, when I say go to market is way bigger than just sales, I mean, stop thinking in silos. And the whole commercial engine needs to work together. And of course, marketing is a part of it. So we should also play our part.
Yeah, I totally agree. Cannot agree more. As a matter of fact, that that alignment piece, I think, is what is missing. We've talked about that briefly. Can you go into more detail and provide some advice on how marketing leaders can create more alignment between marketing, sales, and RevOps?
Oh, 100%, definitely. So I would say get aligned on something very specific, depending on what your company is measuring, kind of what is the bottom line, right? What is the bottom line for the entire commercial organization? For us right now, we focus obviously, apart from just revenue, we're focusing on pipeline. That's the foundation. So we're really trying to be ruthlessly aligned and focused on pipeline. Um, and how it looks in practice is obviously having shared metrics. So I think definitely, having visibility into that. I think, of course, marketing can't be measured on, if you want to call them MQLs, while sales is measured on closed deals. You need metrics that both teams own together. So if that is qualified pipeline velocity, conversion rates through the entire journey, that's super important. So making sure that there is that kind of mutual agreement into like, what are we looking at together? What does success look like? And how can we measure that? And then second, I would say a very regular operating cadence as well.
Yeah.
So talking about weekly syncs between, demand and sales development, monthly business reviews where marketing and sales leaders look at the same dashboards and problem solve together. Without the blame game, because I
Yeah,
think that's something that happens way too easily as well.
not healthy. It's not a healthy environment in the
No,
company.
no,
Yeah.
exactly. So I think, and of course, also quarterly planning where you're building the go-to-market motion together and not separately as well.
So much great intel here, and we're running out of time, so I'm going to speed us up a little bit, which brings us to the final category, which is really talking about metrics that matter. Pipeline to revenue is the North Star, and RevOps investment separates leaders from the laggards, quite frankly. Why is this so important?
Well, I think that's again making sure that I think I see RevOps as kind of the glue between. So we were just talking about making sure that there's genuine alignment between marketing, sales, and RevOps. And I think, making sure that you have that foundation in terms of a neutral third party who's kind of looking at the numbers and making
Yeah.
sure that you are seeing and saying the same thing, and almost kind of having that mediator in between. So I think RevOps is kind of that connective tissue that makes all of this possible. And they're kind of measuring which channels, which touch points actually move deals forward. I think they're the voice of tracking influence, of course, as well, making sure that everybody's looking at the same data. And I think obviously also having that foundation in terms of looking at the same metrics, understanding the same metrics, having clean dashboards that are not skewed towards one or the other, because that also happens very often. Also,
Are there metrics we should stop reporting on?
I think well, I would not say stop reporting, because I think those top of funnel, for example, what I call vanity metrics,
Yeah.
are also important because they're informing some of those deeper level decisions that
Right.
are also important. So, of course, we should be looking at all the metrics, but I think metrics are catering to different needs.
Right.
So I think that's something that we need to keep in mind as well. So yeah, I would say obviously we should keep on reporting on all the metrics, but not necessarily to the same people. So making sure that in those feedback loops with sales as well, obviously we need to be honest and open with what's working and what's not. They don't care about how many impressions our latest LinkedIn post got. They just want to know, like, how can we collaborate together to move those deals forward or get more opportunities in the door.
And I do think many of the frameworks that are out there right now, including ones that we've deployed over the years, are too complicated. And they quite often, yes, there are a ton of numbers. Mostly we feel good about them, but they miss the core component quite often, which I think is really about impact and
100%.
how we got there. What's one practical way that you feel teams can simplify their measurement frameworks for clarity?
Well, I think again, focusing on what matters, impact. I think definitely also less is more here. So maybe focusing on the top three KPIs that actually matter in moving those, whatever it might be, deals or opportunities forward. So I think not looking at too many things, because that kind of just creates a lot of noise. But being very clear and aligned on, like, what are the top three, and let's have that as visible as possible so that everybody looks at the same thing.
Well, I tell you, you've been fabulous today. Such a powerful deep dive across some topics that are so incredibly important to be thinking about as we move into 2026. Before we wrap, you're going to be one of the last times I ask this question for the year. We always end with the same final question with our Better At series that we launched at the beginning of the year to help marketers really sharpen their everyday skills that make a big difference in everything that they do day in and day out. What is one thing you've learned to be better at that's made a measurable difference in how you lead, work, or show up in your role?
Yeah, I had to think about this, and I would say it's slowing down.
Right.
I'm a fast talker. I'm a doer. I have a tendency to move fast, execute quickly, like get things done. And obviously that served me very well in a lot of ways. But honestly, I've realized that sometimes moving fast is not the best strategy.
Okay.
So I need to slow down more. I need to take a step back. I need to look at the big picture and actually analyze before I start doing. So doing fewer things, but doing them better.
Yeah, I love it. You have been fantastic today. Thank you. What is the best way for our audience to get in contact with you?
Yeah, I would say LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. Annika Bjo rkholm. You can find me there. Would love to connect.
And it sounds so beautiful when you say that. Thank you for that.
Aw, thank you so much, Lori. This was a pleasure.
It sure was. And if you'd like to get in contact with me, it's Lori Sartorius Jones on LinkedIn. Annika, thank you so much for your appearance on StrategyCast.
Thank you so much, Lori.
That's a wrap. Thanks for joining us on today's show. We hope your strategic brains are spinning with new ideas and bold inspiration that will elevate your strategies and marketing know-how.